Hey everyone, before we get into this episode, I want to let you know about my free guidebook called Music Production Essentials. It's a brief rundown of my top 24 takeaways that I've learned over the course of interviewing so many audio professionals for this podcast. So just go to secretsonics.co and you'll see the image. It's a totally free download and I hope it helps you with your productions. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 108 with Gab Strum, aka Japanese Wallpaper. I had a great chat with Gab about so many things, including his journey getting started at a really young age, his approach to getting unique tones, working with artists, his approach to production and remixing. There's lots of really good advice here for up-and-coming artists. I really enjoyed the Sauce segment. We broke apart a song called Swing of Things by an artist named Maya, and it was a super unique approach to making a song production. So with all that to say, I think you're going to love this conversation. And here's my conversation with Gab Strum here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Gab Strum, a.k.a. Japanese Wallpaper. With ambient electronica-based beginnings, Gab became an Australian indie music fixture in 2014 at the age of 17, after taking out Triple J's unearthed High Competition, swiftly going on to release his debut eponymous EP, including collaborations with Wafia and Erling, and landing a place in the soundtrack of Zach Braff's acclaimed film Wish I Was Here. As his list of musical kin grew, so did his footprint and influence on the wider music scene, becoming a trusted fixture in the studio, writing and producing for some of Australia's most needle-moving musical forces, including All Day, Mallrat, Tia Gostelow, George Alice, Cry Club, Alex Leahy, the latter very recently working with Strum to craft the theme for the lauded Netflix original The Mitchells vs. the Machines, which I actually saw and loved, whilst walking alongside that list of some of Triple J's most played artists and now crafting his first new music in 18 months. Japanese Wallpaper name has stayed present through collaborations on remixes with the likes of Petite Biscuit, Death Cab for Cutie, Broods, Charlie XCX, and Matt Mason. Gab and I connected on Instagram recently after I released the episode with Andrew Mari, and we actually have a mutual friend in Asher Parks who's also been on the show. So I invited Gab on, who's graciously agreed to join me on Secret Sonics. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Gab.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks for taking the time to do this. So you started really young, and I'm just curious, like, how it all began for you. What made you, your music blow up at the age of 17? Like, how did it begin?
I mean, I started learning music at a really young age. Like, my mum kind of got me on piano lessons when I was around 5 or 6. And I guess since then, I'd just always been playing and really fascinated by music. Like, I really fell in love with the Beatles at a young age, and I spent a few years just learning all of that music and trying to understand everything about how it was made. And that, I think, led me to an interest in just sound and recording and putting records together and all of that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I guess I played in a band in high school, and we'd won this Battle of the Bands competition where the prize was to go and record in a studio. And we had this day where we went to a recording studio and we kind of all got in the room and we played the song a few times, and that was my perception of how recording worked. And there was an engineer there, and yeah, we played the song a few times. The singer did a couple overdubs, and then we left and we got a mix back, and it was like, this is your song. And it was the most soul-crushing experience of just hearing something back and thinking, like, that's not how my band sounds. And it kind of really made me spiral a little bit. But I didn't know how to articulate what I didn't like about it and what about the recording wasn't working. And I think that was really the spark that set me on the path of, wanting to learn about recording and making things and all the kind of different elements and different decisions that go into like a finished record.
Yeah, a lot of people have had that story where they get into a studio and they, as like a kid, and like, okay, cool, we did our song, and like, wait, this doesn't sound like I wanted it to.
Yeah.
I actually had so I didn't have that not really. I didn't really have that experience. I did go into a studio at like 17 for the first time, and at the time I was blown away with it. And then like as listening back later, it's like, wow, this is really kind of distorted and messed up. But when I mastered my first record back in 2013, I was like, I don't like this. Why don't I like this? And then I like bought Bob Katz's mastering book, and I had to learn everything about why I didn't like that master. And anyways, long story short, I ended up remastering it with the mastering engineer in person, sitting there with him, and I learned a lot.
Yeah, I think having got to the end of a couple records for my project and produce things for other people and kind of seen that process from a few different vantage points by now. I think if you can do something yourself to a good standard, you'll always be the best person for the job because you're the only one that actually knows how it should sound. And I think I'm slowly learning that and slowly kind of gaining confidence in those areas. Like I feel like I theoretically could master my own stuff, but it's nice to have another opinion, and for many things it's nice to have another opinion on the mix as well. But I think being able to do things yourself is really key to actually being able to express yourself in the way that you want to and make records that sound how they do in your head.
Yeah, I mean, first, totally. I think there are records where it's like the kind of record where you need to have hands-on all the time, and then there are records where you need to like kind of be open to the collaboration and the other set of opinions. Like with my first record, like I needed to have control over all those aspects, and maybe I should just like not even master it, just pop the limiter on it. I would have been happier probably. And now I listen back and I don't like it because like I was an amateur. But like I feel like there's a time and place for all those things. I don't know. I'm learning like sometimes you want to be open to something else, and sometimes you really do know what the song needs, and like there's a lesson there for the audience of like just trust your gut and your taste.
Yeah, I mean, having said what I just said, I don't think there's a single thing that I've ever made where I'm the only person in the credits. Like I think collaborating is such an important part of all of this as well. But kind of being able to curate the collaborations and steer it on the path that you want to steer it on. Yeah.
Amazing. So how did your first big record at 17 featuring Wafia, how did that come together and how did that kind of blow up?
I mean, like Wafia and I kind of connected over SoundCloud, I think, in like whatever that year was, like 2013. And, she was kind of releasing just covers, acoustic covers on SoundCloud, and I was making bootleg remixes and putting them up as well. And I don't know. Yeah, I think that couple years, like maybe 2014 to 2016 or something, like it felt like there was something that was really happening on SoundCloud specifically, and just a way of uploading something and it reaching people without any strategy or social media or anything like that. And I think I was lucky to start releasing music in that way, because I never really put anything out with a big plan for it to reach people or anything like that. I was just kind of making things and putting them online to show my friends, and then through like just the blog scene and SoundCloud and Hype Machine and all of those things that as soon as I say them, I feel like they make me sound quite old. But I think just you're quite young compared to me, so I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I think just the style of music that I was putting out at that point and the way that the internet was kind of open to receiving it, I just got really lucky in that I was putting out the right thing at the right time for those kinds of tastemakers to hear and share and all of that. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I get asked that question a lot, and I actually don't really have an answer for it because I think things just got kind of swept up in the internet. Like, yeah, that first song that I put out, somehow Zach Braff heard it and wanted to put it in a movie, and like, you can't orchestrate that stuff.
Yeah, it's so cool. I feel like there's something to be said also about being like 17 and really having your finger on the pulse of what's happening with music. You know what I mean? Like the youth are, they know what's hip, they know what's happening,
It's true. Yeah. I mean, I guess the flip side of that is that like at that age, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have the technical skills to kind of back it up. And I think, I don't know, for me, like releasing music that young and kind of starting to find a degree of success at that age was a real double-edged sword, because like with all the really beautiful experiences came this really hectic imposter syndrome and just feeling of like,
I'm sure.
Yeah. And I guess I think that was also something that, kind of became like a motivating factor for me as well, in terms of just getting better at working in the studio and making stuff, was like feeling like I didn't want everything that I made to feel like a happy accident. I wanted to be able to have some kind of like agency over it as well.
That creative vision.
Yeah.
Of like, this is what I'm creating.
Yeah.
I totally hear that. I feel like at the beginning, you are kind of making happy accidents. I love that the way you said that like that. I never thought about it. Like, you're like, oh, let me experiment with this. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's a vibe. And eventually you're like, okay, I need to know what I'm doing. I need to have like that control you were talking about, like having control over your artistic vision,
Yeah. And it's funny, like I feel like now that I have that ability and that control, I feel like I'm always trying to create circumstances where there can be happy accidents again. I feel like the magic is somewhere in between those two things.
Yeah. I'm actually watching the Paul McCartney documentary now.
Oh, I just finished
McCartney
watching
321.
that. Yeah. It was incredible.
You started watching it also?
I just finished it last night. Yeah.
Oh, you just finished it. I got one episode left, and it's giving me the feels. It's awesome. And I just love, like, the Beatles are always happy to leave those accidents in the room. Someone's doing something random, let's leave it on the tape. And I think we've kind of come to this point where a lot of pop music is just too sterile because it's everything is too, programmed and decided on,
Yeah, well, like I mean, a lot of pop music is kind of, a lot of pop production at the moment is just finishing writing demos, It's like a song will come together in a day in the room with someone and then sit on a hard drive for, a couple months or a couple years. And then the finishing process is just kind of refining those really initial ideas as opposed to kind of setting out to make something. I feel like, there's not really enough. People don't have as much time as they did making record, as the Beatles did making records in the 60s.
No one's going to have that much time making a record anymore, right? That's over. We're at a point where, unless you're maybe Tommy Impala, if I'm pronouncing the band name right, the Australian band, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's all fast. Like, budgets are over. Like, it's just about, yeah.
Yeah, but I think, with Tame Impala and with a lot of that, I think that the people that have time for those experiments now are the people that are self-producing, because you can just kind of sit in front of your computer for as long as you want, or at your studio or whatever, whatever tools you have. I think a lot of maybe pop artists that are working with other producers maybe don't have those skills or those means, or, I feel like there are so many demands on those people that they probably just don't have the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. As somebody who has self-produced and produces other people, like I know the difference between like having the time to do that for myself and being and like, okay, like we need to finish this, like when you're working with an artist and you don't have all day. Do you think the future of music is DIY artists, or do you think it's going to be a combination? What do you think?
I don't know. I think the DIY thing is in so many ways already here. Like, the infrastructure for releasing music at the moment, like, you can do it without a label and you can do it without a producer. And if you can, maybe you should, like, there's no one right way to do anything, but I think that people can make really high quality stuff on their own and distribute it to a really large number of people without any kind of infrastructure at the moment.
Wild. So you'd say that if somebody is an artist getting started, they should try to at least DIY it themselves, and if it's not working, then maybe seek a producer, or.
I don't know. I can only say what my experience is, and I think after DIYing it for a while, I signed to a label and I was given a pretty substantial budget to make a record, and I decided to go to the States and work on it with a producer and kind of spend a month in a big studio making an album. So I kind of did the opposite thing. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many ways to do everything at the moment. I still feel
that sounds like such a learning experience also. Like, doing that probably gave you so many skills to go back in the studio and continue doing it yourself. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, that's the thing. I'd kind of like right before making that record, I'd enrolled in university and started doing this kind of like composition degree with like a big studio element. And I was really excited to learn heaps about being in the studio and making records. And then I went to the States and I spent a month with Ben Allen making my album. And I came back and I was like, I just learnt more in a month there than I did in a whole year at university just by sitting in the room and watching someone amazing work. And I feel like that month really set me on my path for just, working in the studio and